So today is going to be it's going to be the same thing as it normally is. So I'll go through all of the content for this month and all of that. But we also have some any other business. And what I've been finding from people who've been very kindly giving me feedback is that when they're watching it, they, think life gets in the way. It's an hour-long session normally. And what ends up happening is they sort of watch the first bit and then they get called away and then it's all sort of, yeah. So I'm going to start with the stuff that I normally do at the end. We'll whiz through that so that whoever's watching the video can literally just click it, be like, okay, this is the information. Now I can do their stuff. And then if they get called away, great. So I've even written it down in my little journal. Hi, Laura. Hopefully you can hear me. Do, as always, if anyone has any questions, shout out. But our first order of business is that our next session is going to be on the 16th of July. So it'll still be a Tuesday, it'll still be at 8 p.m. But we're going to trial something a little bit different. So what I've been noticing and what I've heard from quite a few people is that it can obviously be quite nerve-wracking asking questions about our kids when we know it's going to be recorded because other people will end up hearing it. And I'm very conscious of keeping as much privacy around our kids as we possibly can for those who want to. If you want to share and all of that, that's absolutely great, not a problem at all. But for those who don't, we'll do that. So what I'm going to do is the second session of every month isn't going to be recorded. Instead of it being like me delivering a training and then us sort of waiting till the end to have a chat, it's going to be more of a resource creation session. We're going to trial it. If people hate it, not a problem. I really don't mind. This is just trying something new. But essentially, the next session, bring along anything you want to work on, anything you want to create, anything you want to adapt. Hi, Heidi. And then we will work on that. So, for example, I might print out some stuff for the kids that I work with. Hi.
Hello.
And then we can all sort of sit together and make stuff if we want to. If you don't have any resources you want to make and you want to make, do some crochet or something, that's absolutely great as well, not a problem. But it'll hopefully help us be a little bit more, able to chat, able to have sort of conversations as they arise, particularly if we're doing resources at the same time. We can go through. If you're like, Laura, I'm going to pick you, for example. If you're like, okay, Jen, I need something for my child to do with, I don't know, spellings this month. What can we do? I can then, with you, go through, find it, make sure you've got it. You can then potentially even at that moment print it. That's great, Laura. We love always needing stuff. I always need stuff as well. But potentially you can then print it and then spend that time making it. So as an example, I'm going to be doing this game with one of my little girls next week. So we could then sit the week after the thing. I could sit and cut all of these out and then let you guys know what's coming up, etc. As works for you. So as I say, we're going to trial it. We're going to see how it works and whether it works. And then that way, if anyone has questions that they are nervous about being recorded and retained, you won't have to worry about that. What I will be doing instead, for those watching on replay who might be feeling a little bit nervous because this time might not work for them, what I'm going to be doing instead is sending out an email on Wednesday with a sort of recap of everything we've talked about. So it won't involve names, it won't involve members' names unless members would like to. So for example, if you're like, Jen, I'm really proud of my child, they've done this in the phonics screen, or actually they read a word independently for the first day, and I go, oh, would you like a shout out in the group? I will absolutely do that, because I feel like that can be really, really rewarding for us to be able to share that sort of thing. But I know that for some people that is not something you want to happen, and that's also absolutely fine. I myself am quite a private person, which I know I probably don't seem like it because I talk for England, but I completely get that. So I'll be writing an email with no names and stuff, but if any questions come up, I'll talk about, oh, we talked about using these resources for spellings, or we talked about adapting this through doing this, and you'll get that email out Wednesday, either in the morning if I've been really on it and managed to do it Tuesday night, or later through the day. But that's going to be our first trial. That's going to be the 16th, and we'll see how that goes. It'll still be the same time. You'll still get reminders for exactly the same thing. It'll still be on here, but it's just going to be a slightly different setup for it. And that way as well, you can drop in and out. So if you're like, oh, actually, I have one question I want to ask, and then I have to get off and do the rest of my life, great. Or if you want to sit and chat and make resources, that's great too. hopefully that's all good. Thanks for feedback from those who have. I appreciate that. The other thing is, I'm going to be posting a lot more in the Facebook group now. I've been on a bit of training hype last week, and it's given me some ideas of things that I want to make sure you guys are aware of, because I know that sometimes emails get lost or go into spam, or same with Facebook posts. So I'm going to try and be a lot more consistent about posting in the Facebook group for lots of different things, like masterclasses, links to masterclasses, links to these sessions. Some people have been sending me some amazing photos of work that they've done with their kids. I'm going to be posting a bit more of that. If you want to share that in the group yourself, please do, because it's so lovely to see. But if, again, you're not comfortable sharing that because they're anonymous, you can absolutely send it to me and then on again. With the Facebook game, so Laura's just said, could we have some more game ideas in the Facebook? The only reason that I'm not going to say yes straight away is because, weirdly, that's a huge amount of work for me. So I try and get a game out in the common group, the one that everyone is in, once a week. What I will try and do is post that into the group as well. But my hope is that if people start sharing the games that they're doing, that's then plays that sort of element through. But just so you know, essentially for me to create the games, write the script for them and then post them, that does take me nearly half an hour, which is great. And it's fab, but there is so much content already in the community that doing it again can be a bit difficult. So what I'll try and do is take the stuff that I'm already doing for the common stuff and post it in as well, because some people find that easier. But I'm not going to say a hard yes on posting more games in the Facebook group, because I'm still only one person. If I manage to get someone else on, then absolutely that's something that I can do in the future. But for now, that's something I'm going to have to hold off on. Hopefully with the resource sessions as well, we can have that as more of a sort of discussion. So you can get your games and specific things that will be relevant to you, because I'm here and I can show them to you straight away. Does that make sense? So hopefully that will be then an added value, rather than something that not necessarily everyone will find useful, because I'll be picking random games. But hopefully that makes sense to everyone. The other thing is we have, amazing, thank you, Laura, I appreciate that. The other thing is we have 2 masterclasses confirmed this month, both next week. One on Tuesday and one on Thursday, because a couple of people have asked for me to redo the Ready for Year 1 one. And then I posted that and someone immediately commented saying, are you doing one about reception? So I'm doing that as well. So that will be on Tuesday and Thursday. I have loads of posts going up in the Facebook group to let you know about it, including if you don't want to sign up for it, which is absolutely fine, there will be the Zoom link posted on those days in the group. So you can just click the link and come in. So you guys don't have to sign up for it at all. You don't have to get any emails. You can just click the link and join. The only thing there is you won't get the replay, but I have access to all the replays. So if I ever do something that you miss and you're like, Jen, actually, can you just pop me the replay? It's really easy for me to do. So I'm very happy to do that. I'm very happy to post it in the group afterwards. I might actually make a note of that. Post the link in the group afterwards, because there's no reason you guys can't have it. Post in group after. So then everyone can hopefully get that. It is next week, Heidi, yes. Tuesday and Thursday next week. Next week's going to be hell for me, honestly, guys. I've a bit overbooked myself. So if anyone sees me on Friday and I look even more dead than I currently look, you'll know why. If anyone has any feedback on any changes that are happening, or anything in the group, or anything that you come up against or come and see, or positive or negative, please let me know. It's a one-woman show here, and while obviously in my head I'm like, oh, this will be great, this will be brilliant, I actually don't know. It might work for me, and you might be like, Jen, that's awful, can you please just stop doing that? Or actually, Jen, you're sending out all of these emails, but I don't get access to any of them, I don't read them, I don't have time. And that's really helpful for me to know, because then I can adapt to what suits you. Cassie says that'll be much easier. I always struggle to find the link. Brilliant. Great to have easy access into the group today. Reminders were fab too. No problem at all, Cassie. Thank you for letting me know that. That's really that sort of thing is really helpful. So I know whether it's beneficial, because then I can hopefully maintain my own bandwidth and make this the best group I possibly can without me burning out, but also without me doing lots of stuff that isn't then relevant to you guys, if that makes sense. or doing something that you're all like, this is atrocious, Jen, stop it, this isn't helpful, or it just doesn't fit in your bandwidth. Like, so many people send me emails. I find if it's an email that's gone out to lots of people, I probably won't read it. If it's a personal email, I read them all because I'm much more interested. But that sort of thing is helpful for me to know, which is why I'm doing loads of polls and updates in the Facebook group as things change. So do please, if you're on the Facebook group and you can check it, brilliant. Equally, if Facebook is not a thing for you, please let me know that so I can work out other ways that would support you with that. And then finally, we made it through all the AOB. It only took us 11 minutes, and we'll get onto the July content. Thank you guys so much for listening to all of that. If you're watching on replay and you have any opinions, you should be able to comment below in the YouTube video, which will then notify me, or you can just send me a text message or email me or whatever works for you. But hopefully that all made sense. Hopefully you've got the AOB now. And if you have any feedback or any ideas, please do just let me know. That's what I'm here for. For those of you who are currently here, thank you guys so much for sticking with me. Shall we start on the July content and show you what we've got? Yes. Hopefully let's give it a go. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking when you do something a bit different. Amazing, thank you, Cassie. Yeah, it's always a little bit different when you nerve-wracking when you do something different, but hopefully you guys are with me on this. So just in case anyone has not seen it for a while, or like mental bandwidth and stuff, and you haven't logged in for a little while, why does this not have a back button? Because it's going to be tricky for me, that's why. It just doesn't want to do it. Oh, I love it, I love technology. So what I'm actually going to do is, here we go. This is what I wanted anyway. That's not a problem, Laura. It's really not a problem. It takes time to get into anything that's new. So if you're doing this on a laptop, it'll come up looking like this. And for a lot of you, you'll get this thing being like, oh, you haven't been given access to the community. That's because at the moment, this is just useless. It's not got any resources, anything that I would like it to have in order for me to give you good quality stuff. It just doesn't exist. It's still in beta testing or whatever you call it. So all you would need to do is go to learning, and then it's a powerful parents portal. You just click open and that's it. If you don't have that, you should be able to click add course, and then it should be able to, you select the ones that you've got access to. So if I select Phonics Check Champions, which you all do, it should be add course. Oh, it's not going to do that anyway, but that should, for you, because you're not running it, that should be all you need to do, and it'll just open. So here we are. So I've gone into this. All I need to do now is scroll down. So if you're working with a reception child, you have the reception monthly content. If you're working with a year one child, you have the year one monthly content. We are in July at the moment, so we would go down to July, which is down here somewhere. There we go. And then the one we're going to look at today is the overview. The reason we're sticking with this is because it's the easiest way for you to get all of the information. If you are trying to find something specific, I'm going to work on a sort of broader chart over August, where you can sort of click on that chart, see what the topics that are covered are, and go into those. So you can then find things a bit more easily, which was something I didn't think I would need back when I started this back in September, when it was you and me, Heidi, you, me and Lauren. And now obviously it's got a little bit more involved. So yeah, we're starting with July. If you've got a year one child, you just keep scrolling and it'll come down to July 2024. There we go. I always forget that June exists. And then you'll have the July overview. Let's go into the overviews now quickly. Let's start with reception. For those of you who are currently on the stream, we're still focusing on recapping those sounds. That is the most important thing. And shock and horror, it'll be the same thing next month. We want our kids, when they start year one, we want them to be really solid on the digraphs and the single letter sounds that we've done already. So recapping all previous sounds is the priority. If your child doesn't know any of those sounds yet, that's absolutely fine. Remember, you do have within the portal, in the year-round resources, you have the Phonic Sounds Checker, Phonic Sound Tracker, where you can click on that and it will come through and give you all the details and everything that you need, so you can check out. Let's just see if it lets us. I go through how to do it, but ultimately it'll come through and show you what the sounds are. So you can run through that with your child and see which ones they know and which ones they don't, and just tick them off. Oh, I should have actually shown you on that. By the end of reception, we expect our kids to be at the end of 3. To remind those of you whose kids do read, write, ink, there are 1 or 2 sounds that are different. The oi would be spelt with a Y, and the A would be spelt with a Y. So it might be that your child doesn't know that one, but actually does know them from the phase 5 set. So that's absolutely fine. But ultimately, by the end of reception, we want our kids to be at this point, so phase 3 finished. If your child knows some phase 5 sounds, because I know that some of you, your little ones, have started this in reception, or you've been doing it, you've been following along with the community, fab. You can absolutely go through, track how many you've got. And for those of you who have kids in who will be going into year 2, we will be doing all of these when we hit year 2 as well. But yes, so that's all in there. We also have the 6 pillars progress tracker. I'm going to do a specific one on the progress tracker at some point, either this month or next month, so that we can do a final, yeah, this is where we are, brilliant. And then I'm going to try and make it so that everything is much clearer throughout the year on when schedules are, etc. But yes, hopefully that will all work. So the next thing we could work on is adjacent consonants. This is something that we will spend a lot of time on next year. So if your child is still struggling with it, don't worry. Equally, if your child has got it already and you're like, oh, Jen, I don't need to do any more of this, that's fine. We will just let you know, we will still have loads of other things that we're doing in year 1. But this is the biggest roadblock that our kids face. And I know one member was messaging me the other day to say that actually their little one finds this very easy. Brilliant. Absolutely love that. If the aim is that they never even notice it's a block to go through, that's great. But it's much more common for kids to find it tricky than not. So don't worry if that's the case either. And then we're introducing the alternative spellings for some of these. As I said last month, and I feel like the month before, maybe it was just last month, when we're introducing, we're not expecting them to learn them. We're just showing them that there's more than one way of writing the same sound. So again, instead of alternative sounds, that's what we call them. They might be called phase 5 sounds, or they might be called special friends, or alternative special friends, or higher level special friends. But these are the ones we're going to focus on. So ooh, ow, oi, and I've done them for all of them, so you can absolutely use all of them. Those are just the focus ones. And then finally, we have 4 tricky words this month. Some come little one. The reason I've joined them together, for some reason, adding little in has always worked with the kids, because little one is really common in books. But also some come one. The O and the E make a weird sound. So instead of come or some, or even comb and soam and own, they make a slightly different sound. So that's why I've jumped them all together. Again, in reception, we want to focus on them reading them really, really rapidly. In year 1, we'll start working on spellings. But if you want to start working on spellings and getting them to write them now, fab, brilliant. Then activities-wise, I'll go through these in more detail in a second, but we're focusing on blending skills, which is sort of that reading, segmenting, writing mash. Some adjacent consonants, alternative sounds, and comprehension. And then we have our tricky words as well. So before we jump into year 1, let's go through what they are. So for blending and reading activities this month, I've kind of gone a bit all over the place. It's more like a recap section. So we've got our sound bingo to start off with all of the sounds that your child should know by the end of this year. Now, I will just preface that by saying if you are homeschooling, you have no pressure to be done at that point. You can absolutely go with the flow. That's fine as well. But these are the ones we would hope that by the time our child starts year 1, whenever that is for you, these are the ones we want our children to know. All you're going to do is call out a sound and get your child to look for it. The thing is, challenge them to notice that there might be more than one option. So for example, if you called out k here, hi Lauren, if you called out k here, your child would be able to spot that one, but they also need to spot that one and that one. There's more than one. When they fill it out, they shout out bingo. If you have more than one child or more than one family member playing, it's whoever does it first. And I have some blank ones there as well. I'm going to try not to go into depth on how to play each of these because they are all in the videos. So if we go into here, for example, that's year 1. Just so everyone knows, I do go into a lot of detail in the videos. So flashcards and pronunciation, I go through what the new sounds are. We have all the sounds there. We have all of the single letters flashcards and then the single letter words to match them. And the same with digraphs, trigraphs, special friends, whatever you call them. And phase 4 and even the phase 5 flashcards are all in here for you to use. Then again, with the blending the reading, I've gone through all of how to play the games and why we play each game. And the same for all of these. So I'm going to do a sort of quick rundown of why I've done them rather than a proper breakdown of how to play the games. But for the reading countdown, that's more focusing on building up confidence with reading. So we're getting them to read more words more quickly, building up a little bit of stamina. They don't have to have a lot. These can be very simple words. That's not a problem. And as I say, you can get all of the words that you would ever want from this section here. So words, 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 and you can choose what level you want to work at. But by speeding up that reading, by putting that little bit of pressure on, which might not work for every child, and that's fine if not, but that can make it really exciting and get your child wanting to read, even if they are reluctant. Particularly if you find that your child guesses at words, if they can only get it if they sound it out, this can be a really good activity to do because your child doesn't benefit from rushing. Even though they've got a timer there, speeding through it doesn't get them points because they'll get it wrong. They have to get it right. So that can help with sounding out and going a bit slower. Then what's the password? We played it before, but again, this is great for practicing recognizing sounds if you want it, or recognizing words, choosing just 5 words from the bag. I do this with the year 1s all the time at this point of the year, where I just choose 5 words before we leave the house in the morning. Or obviously for me, it's my classroom, and get my child to read those 5 words. And we cannot leave until they've read those 5 words. Now, obviously, if you have a time crunch in the morning, this might not be the game for you. It might be that they can't enter the house until they've read those 5 words, or you use it for a different door, like just before bed, or every time they go into their room, or every time they come into the kitchen, they have to read 5 words. But again, it's just a chance for them to do a little bit more reading. With our adjacent consonant activities, we have a simple read and match. Again, it's the pictures are there to support your child's reading of these words. So you can choose a picture and 3 words and see which one matches. Hide and seek is a good one for spellings and segmenting. So working out what sounds are in a word, because again, you can give your child the picture. We've got a picture of a tent, and then you tell them they have to go and find the letters that match it. So they then have to work out what are the letters. So they could do this one of 2 ways. They could just run around, try and find all the letters, or you can start by saying, what sounds are in tent? And your child goes, t, t. Chances are they won't. If your child struggles with adjacent consonants at all, they will go tet, t, et. And you go, that's brilliant. You're missing a sound. You've got t, you've got t, et. We need tent. What sound are we missing? Tent. And your child will hopefully then be like, brilliant. By doing it that way, you've just given them a little bit more support to work it out. They then have to remember those in their head, find them, bring them back, and then write it out properly so they're still matching those sounds to the letters as well. I would suggest you can use flashcards, but actually just post-it notes or scrap paper is great, and you just hide it around the house. Brilliant. And then the other one is we've done paper rolls before, but so if you've got that one already, fab, keep using it, just add in another letter. So this is a great one for starting those adjacent consonants because it can be any word. Your child then rolls it, they still have to try and blend it all together, but essentially you have consonants, vowel in the middle, consonants, however many you want either end. Again, this is great for alien words, but great for training your child's mouth strength as well. Alternative sounds, I've got my little note here saying it's just an introduction, so don't worry. We have story search. This can be a really useful one at bedtime, where you just go through and as you're reading a story, you say, oh, that word says cake, but that's not how we spell A. How do we do A normally? And they might say, or they might not. But the point is to point out that it's a bit different. Which again just helps kids recognize that they are doing really, really well on their reading. They're going to learn a bit more as well. Then I've put together these Go Fish options. Essentially, you can just chop them across. If you're really fancy, you can chop them all out so they make beautiful fish. I then just peg them with, oh, I can't use that one. That one's fallen over. I just peg them with a little bull clip because it's good for hand strength. And then my child picks it out of the bowl, whichever side it's on. If they don't recognize it, they turn it over. So let's say they've picked it up on this one. They turn it over, they read E, and you go, fantastic, you've caught your fish for dinner. How many more fish can you catch? By doing this, you are helping them make the connection between the two spellings. So this is E, but this is also E. And what you might find happen, and what I tend to see happen, is that after they play it a few times, because there's not a huge number of them, there's 3 sheets, so 12 words. After they do it a few times, your child will pick up this one and go, well, that's E. And by doing that, you've passively taught them what the sound is because it's linked to the other. If your child doesn't do that, no problem. We are going to teach it explicitly in year 1, but it's just another option. If you are in year 1 and you want to nip back and steal this one, it's another great way of just making sure your child knows the sounds, because there's no support there. There's no picture for them to look at and go, oh, I think I can work that sound out. They just have to know the sounds. And then the other one is splat the sounds. So I've got some cards here, again, with both or all 3 alternative spellings on them. Chuck them around the room and shout out which sound you want. Your child goes and finds it. It's great for getting a bit of energy out. It's another one you can play over the summer holidays as well. And again, it's just that passive taking in of what the other spellings are. And I've got those cards there to just in case you want them. You'll notice we are not doing split digraphs at this point. Split digraphs are understandable, but they can be quite confusing. So I would recommend not including split digraphs when you're playing a game like this. If you're like, my child knows all of these sounds, Jen, I'm ready to do split digraphs, send me a message and we'll talk about it. We'll get them starting that, and that's brilliant. But we want to introduce it in the right way, which I'm sure Lauren knows what I'm going to mention with that. Then we've got our comprehension activities. Just for those who are left hanging, it's going to be the Magic E song. It's a great way to introduce it. For the comprehension questions, I've got some simple sentences that have digraphs in them and a couple of adjacent consonants. But ultimately, it's a great one to make sure the child is reading, give them a reason to read, and give them a bit of control over it. Again, I would suggest doing maybe 1 sentence at a time. If your child is really into it, great. I would go through all of these with my class, but then I have a class of 30. So they're not constantly having to read it themselves. They are reading it as a group. But it's a really good way to get them reading little bits and reading confidently. We have sentences where you can just cut them out and jumble them up. Lauren says, to be fair, mine can read the split digraph words just fine, but she's weaker at identifying them within words. Yeah. That's absolutely fine. As in, like, to spell them or just to point them out? Oh, or do you mean actually within the word? So when you've got a word ending on the end, like model, for example, which could then be modal. Whichever way it is, that's very, very normal. And it's trickier when it's in a word, because sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But what you're working on at the moment, Lauren, is reading in context, which is what will make her so much stronger anyway. She'd read bone but wouldn't necessarily spot the O split E. That's not a problem. That's just it's gone into her head. She's doing it passively now, which is what we want. I mean, I don't necessarily spot split digraph every time I read. The only time I do is because I'm a primary school teacher and it's my job. This one's great because it's helping your child make a sentence structure, develop an understanding of how words go together, which will help them a lot when they hit year 1 and start writing. All you're going to do is chop them up and mix them up. There might be a couple of variations. That is not a problem at all. For example, if it was a cat on a hat, it could be a hat on a cat, and that would be fine. So don't worry if you find that they've made a correct sentence, but it's not the one you were looking for. That's still great. The aim is to be looking for the correct structure so that it makes sense. Because this will help them when they are reading later and also when they're writing as well. But I've got some easy ones, and then I've got some slightly harder ones as well as they go along. We've got some comprehension stories for those kids who are finding memory harder. So if your child is a bit older and finding memory harder, we actually did this last month with a higher level again on the end, but you might find this useful. So the first one is giving them a book they know very well and getting them to retell the story using the pictures. And then this one is giving them a book they have never seen before and getting them to make up the story using the pictures as they flip along, and then telling you the story afterwards. It might well do, Laura. It might be one that is useful for you. Do you mean, well, both of these might be useful for you. Then we've got tricky word activities. So we've got a Connect 4. I've gone through, for reception, I've just done the ones that we've done, but it's all the ones we've done this year. So strategy 1 is get your child to read the word. So they've read the word no, and then they can use it. Strategy 2 is you read a word from yours. You say, my word is the, they have to write it on their blank card. So it then becomes a spelling. And if they've spelt it correctly, they can then use their counter. It's just another option. We've got what's the passcode again, but using tricky words instead of sounds. And this is brilliant if you've got one or two that your child is really, really stuck on, because they're going to see it every single day. They're going to see it repeated a lot. And then you can adjust it and move it as works for them. So I wouldn't do, well, you can, as long as you stick to separate doors, you can do both this and sound recognition or word recognition, word reading. But I wouldn't do the same on one door because it can get a little bit overwhelming. And then finally, thank you to whoever suggested Hangman, because yes, that is a fantastic idea. Hangman is a brilliant one. Essentially, for those who haven't played it, you are challenging your child to work out what letters are going to be in the word. To start off with, I would suggest putting the cards in front of your child so they know what they're choosing between, which might make it too easy, in which case add a few more in, or start removing the cards when they start getting a bit more confident, but it can help them with the spellings. But ultimately, they need to guess the letters, and every time they guess correctly, you fill it in. Every time they don't, you draw a line. Brilliant. And then I've added in an extra bonus one this month, because I know, and when it's the end of term, you might be going straight off on holiday, and if you are, you can just hop along. Brilliant, have a great one. And you can go straight for this one, which is fantastic. If you are not, that's also great. You can do it in any body of water, the kitchen sink, the bath, a puddle outside if you want to. But ultimately, all you need for this is some, if you've got some letters that you don't mind getting wet, so my foam ones, for example, will go in the bath, no problem. Choose one of the words. So let's say we're choosing the word one. You tell your child that we've got the word one, or you've dropped 3 letters in the pool, and I tend to sort of throw them so they can see them. They then have to dive down, pick them up, put them on the side. Obviously, if your child is less confident in swimming, they might just do it in a basin, or you might do it in the shallow end and they have to try and pick it up with their feet. However you want to adapt it, that's absolutely fine. But you throw it in, they pick them up, and then they have to work out what the word is on dry land. I will go through this for the year ones as well, but for reception, I would suggest having the options in front of them, and then they try and match them across, because we're not expecting spelling in reception, but it can be a good way to start it. Cassie says, are your foam letters lowercase? Any tips on where to find some? They are, I know. I did post it in the Facebook group ages ago. To be fair, Amazon is a really good one. I hate that I have to say that I'm jumping to that, but ultimately, yeah, foam letters from Amazon, plastic letters from Amazon. If you just type them in, you will get a good variety of them. If I can, let me just lowercase letters, and I'll add that to the bottom of the replay email that I send out for you. Hopefully that will. Is that right, Cassie? Cool. But yeah, they're fantastic. I love a bit of, no worries at all. I love a bit of water play. It just makes it a bit more exciting. So we are on to year 1. Shockingly enough, we are also recapping all of our sounds. So as we, and I know I've warned you about this before, as we hit year 2, phonics becomes much less important in schools, which means that our kids don't get as much support. So we want our kids to be as solid on their phonics as they possibly can at this point in the year, before it starts to drop off in year 2. Now, that obviously very much irritates me, because it should be consistent through year 2, but there are fewer sounds for kids to learn, and there's a huge, particularly, well, now that SATs have been scrapped, it's a bit lighter, but it was hugely pressureful to try and fit everything in. So I understand why traditionally this has happened, but it's, yeah, where we can, if we can make sure that our kids know all of these sounds, brilliant. As I said, we have this, and for the year 1s, all we actually expect them to do is to get to the end of phase 5. So they can recognize all of those, they can read words with all of those in confidently. Brilliant. We don't expect phase 6, that is year 2 stuff, and we will be covering that next year. I'm working on it at the moment. I'll get it out as soon as I've got it done. Which might take time, because I'm essentially doing 4 new syllabi, whatever, in one go. So we'll see how far I get with that, and how rapidly I'm able to bring it out. And then we have nearly the entirety of the year 2 tricky words as well. So if you find that actually your child hasn't done all of these, don't worry, we will be doing them in year 2 as well. We've got move, prove, improve, sure, sugar, and I. I doesn't fit to those, but sure and sugar do. And who and whole, and any and many. So they're all matching, they're all patterns, but there is no pressure to be able to do all of this. To put it in perspective, I work with a couple of year 2 kids at the moment who I'm incredibly proud of, because out of the 64 year 2 words, they can spell 54 of them. And that's at the end of year 2. That is above average. That is more than we would expect. And I'm really, really proud of them. So don't feel like at the end of year 1, your child has to spell all of these. But if they can read these, fab. And if they can go back and spell the earlier ones, also fab. Again, in year 2, we will be recapping all of the spellings so that we make sure that our kids are really solid. The reason we do these spellings, is because these are the ones that come out the most often. Sorry. So this will speed up their writing in year 2, and year 2 really is all about stamina. It's all about sort of focus and maintaining that stamina and building it up. So we use the skill in year 1 and adapt it to be further on in year 2. The more words our children automatically know how to spell, the easier their writing is going to become. Lauren says E's class has been working on introducing some of the basic sounds for a while now. Kids like E are flying, but I think it pushes the struggling ones way behind. There is a really good, and I know you'll be interested in this, Lauren, there's a really good study on what should year 2 be used for. And there's a lot of proponent from teachers saying that year 2 should just be a recap year. That sounds very negative for parents of kids who are flying, but it would be massively beneficial for all kids. The ones who are flying, they could absolutely be set their own mastery tasks. We're getting, as a country, we're getting better at doing mastery rather than next level up. Mastery, by the way, means that you understand it at a deeper level. Kids who have a mastery of maths at an early level are more likely to go further in maths further on. And really what we see is after year 2, the gap just widens. And I'm really sorry to anyone whose children are stuck in that problem. Laura says, I agree so much with this. There's a lot, well, if we just used year 2 to shore up any gaps and go back over the entirety of the year 1 curriculum and close up gaps and make sure that every child is just recapping and recapping rather than trying to push more and more on them, we would see a massive closing of gaps. And by the time we get to year 3, we'd be able to do more with more kids more quickly, because there would be less of a difference between the tops and the bottoms. And unfortunately, I love year 1 because I can see the tops and the bottoms, but it's a much smaller gap than when you hit year 6. And we don't want that to be a thing. Cassie says, are spelling tests in the national curriculum in year 1? Nope. Used to hate them as a child. Hope my daughter's school don't do them, but is this compulsory for them to do them? No, nope. Spellings are not compulsory in year 1. The target tracker end of year statement says, is able to spell many of the tricky words from the year 1 curriculum. That's it. And there's another one which is can use some spelling rules, which is phonics, is what they're saying. So don't worry about that. Your child probably will do a spelling test each week. I had to, as part of a requirement from the school. The governors insisted upon it, and therefore it had to be done throughout the school. Higher up, that makes sense. In year 1, there's only certain words that children need to know, and it's the tricky words. I am fundamentally against spellings that focus on phonics. It doesn't make sense. Your child should know phonics in order to spell words. So giving them like only A words this week, all that does is take time away from learning tricky words, which is what they should be doing. So when we hit year 1, Cassie, we will be doing tricky words as spellings to focus on, rather than wishy-washy, oh, let's spell rain. Our kids should be able to do that with phonics. Lauren says, seriously though, recap would be fab because they can develop fluency and understanding at a great level without being pushed further faster, and there would be less gaps. Absolutely, that's exactly my view on it. And as Lauren, you've been with me for a full year now. You know, I just recap and recap and recap, and I know that for some people they look at it and go, but my child knows this. But you're exactly right. It gives the ones that are flying, let's call it that, learning more is only going to get them to the point where they no longer fly, which will then give them a bit of an issue. And I see this a lot, particularly with kids who are particularly high level. They suddenly hit a wall, and then that's the first thing they failed at, and then they drop off because they're emotionally not prepared for it. If we went back over it again and again, you're exactly right, Lauren, they would be developing fluency, they'd be developing comprehension, they'd be developing deeper learning skills, or deeper understanding or critical thinking, which actually would just support them further on. And then when they finally can't do something because they don't know something, rather than having a breakdown, which is a dramatic word for it, but I have seen in some kids, they're like, oh, I didn't get this right. Let's think about how we could get this right, which is it's beneficial for everyone, but it requires a lot of stuff that is very, very difficult to get through a school. It requires a head teacher who is willing to allow that. And it requires a lot of parents who are very understanding, and, well, it requires a teacher who's willing to talk to parents about why it's so important, and support kids with mastery as well, so that kids aren't sitting there bored while they go over something, and so that parents understand why the kids aren't doing new stuff, because new stuff doesn't mean better stuff, if that makes sense. Like, if you can do 2 plus 2, and so I'm going to make you now do 2 plus 3 plus 2, great, you might be able to still do it, but actually it'd be more beneficial for you to be able to do 20 plus 2, so that you understand the difference between tens and ones, and you get the mastery of, like, how can I make this with deans? How can I do this with different ways? Anyway, thank you for listening to my rant. This has been my TED Talk. Lauren says there's a huge difference between a capable year 3 and one who clearly hasn't followed it from the start. Exactly. And a lot of that is summer born, and that's it. And that really, really winds me up. There's been a couple of kids I've taught in my career who, if I had been able to hold them for one more year, even in year 1, that gap just wouldn't have widened. It just wouldn't have widened. And there's one child I still work with who the gap is so wide, and it's really upsetting and demoralizing, both for me and for him, because I taught him in year 1. If he'd resat reception, he'd been ready for year 1. He might not have flown, he might not have been top of the class, but he'd have understood it a bit better. And he was born on the 28th of August, which is an interesting thing. Yeah, so if your child, or anyone you know's child, ever goes to school and they get to year 2 and the year 2 teacher is just doing the same thing they did last year, there is really good reason behind it. That is a school you want your child at. Not necessarily, obviously, there's so many difficulties when it comes to it, but obviously I have the idea of a perfect school in my head, which is one that I would run and teach at and do based off all the evidence, and that's not humanly possible to do. Every school I've worked in has had people who genuinely care about the kids. Yeah, life is tricky when you're dealing with more than one, or more than 15 actually. It's really hard. I found COVID, as horrible an experience as it was really eye-opening to me, because I had 12 children in my class, and the amount we did with those 12 children, because I could meet the need, was huge. It was really eye-opening. Our year 2 has done nothing to support little ones learning. I know, exactly. And it's been, you've had a few difficulties with that, Laura, because you had a change in teacher, and a difficulty with resourcing teachers, and unfortunately we are seeing more and more of that. But it is really unfortunate, because, as you know, recapping is beneficial, and that's where you are so important, and you are so valuable to your little one, because you've stepped in. And to be honest, the more that parents can step in, if every parent in the world was doing support at home and all of this extra stuff that you're doing, literacy rates would skyrocket. It would just be amazing. Lauren says, I have the summer-born kid, but she's different caliber of summer-born to her classmate who's on Pink Red Books. Yeah, but also part of that is you, Lauren, because you do put so much work into it, and you do support her so much. And if you think back to this time last year, and where your little one was at this time last year, yes, she's a bit older, but you've also really gone with her and really supported her and made sure that she is going at her pace, and you've been amazing. So don't knock yourself out of that equation, because parental impact is huge. It is really huge. And I'm so lucky that I get to work with parents who care so much and who are so willing to put so much effort into their child's education. Because yeah, it can get quite stressful as a teacher when you really want to help and it's not necessarily possible for you to do so. So I am really grateful that I get to work with you guys. So what are we focusing on in year one? Thank you for my little TED talk. Let's come back to the point. We have alternative sounds. We're just recapping a couple of ones. These are slightly higher level ones. I was trying to think of things that you could take with you on holiday or just do over the summer holidays if you wanted to. These might be a bit challenging for some kids, but it's always a good way to introduce them. Then we've got some spelling rules because some people have been asking specifically, I know I'm doing the whole thing on spelling rules, but some people have been asking for year one specific ones. So I've created a couple of worksheets specifically for that, which will be some of the resources that I create when we're doing resources. And I'll show you through those in a second. We've got those. Then we've got vocabulary. And again, we've got some that we can work on over the summer. Fluency, again, these are a couple of worksheets because some people have been asking about punctuation. I have a bonus topic that I'm currently in the process of creating. I can prove that to you, where I'll be talking about reading with expression and using punctuation to do that. But this is an activity that will help with that as well. And then we have the same tricky word activities, but I'll talk through how they're slightly different. So whizzing through alternative sounds, we have 2 activities. I have the rules there as well. 2 activities. The first one is make a word, and I won't go through it because I have played it for you guys with the words up on the screen in the group. But essentially your aim is to make words out of the flashcards that you either have or that you can see on the table. The reason this is different from Scrabble or anything else is because we're using these flashcards. This is so beneficial when your child first starts playing these games because they don't have to work out spellings. Instead, they can work out sounds. So, for example, this could be boat or coat or float, any of those. It doesn't matter what the actual spelling is because they don't have to remember it's or ah and put those together. They'd already have that card. Equally, if you found that your child was writing toe like this, in this game, that doesn't matter. That's absolutely fine because the aim is to use the sounds to spell the words. This Scrabble is slightly different to the game that I've just played, but is similar in the structure because you're just putting the words down on the table and having to use the words that you already see on the table to make more. But again, I won't go into those in too much detail because I did do quite a long video on them. Spelling rules, double letters. If it's at the end of a word, it's double S. So with all of these, at the end of the word, it's double. What I've done here is not tell you that. So ultimately, the aim is to get our child to spot it and work it out. So you might want to print out 1 or 2 of these so your child has a chance to do both options. Does it look right? Does it not look right? Which one works? Okay, what's the rule? So then by the time they get to the end, they can say double letter on the end. Brilliant. Send the video of that on the group. The first one, Cassie? These games. I can do that now, actually. Yeah, no problem. I will pop that across right now if people don't mind bearing with me. This is the idea of what it'll be like in the resource sessions is essentially I'll be able to just pop these ones across. Hopefully these are the ones you mean. And if not, I will pop the other ones across as well. And I will do a proper post with these in a second, but that is now ready to go in the group. So it'll pop up in a second in the group. Hopefully that's all right. Oh, sorry, we're still on these. So spelling rules. The next one is VE. When should that be? Again, looking at it, which one looks right, which one doesn't look right, and what's the rule? When do you add E? By getting our kids to look at this themselves, by getting our kids to look at this themselves, our kids are able to work out the rule and therefore understand it better. And they're more likely to remember it than if we go, oh, when it's on the end, it has an E, because they're able to then adapt and learn that. And then finally, we have Y or E. So this is a 2-step activity. First, your child has to work out what the word is. Is it khaki or is it cake? So this is both a split digraph and an E, meaning Y on the end. They fill in all of these and then they cut them out and stick them on each side. Lauren has said, Laura, I think you've sent a direct message to Lauren instead of to me or something. Yes, and then vocabulary activities. We did this one in reception. So this is a slightly higher level of it. Again, I've put the link in here for Vocabulary Ninja. They have a lot of free resources. So I'm not recommending anything that's paid. but they have like a word of the day. I've got a few suggested words here, and essentially rather than, well, with a year one child, you can fill this all out in one go and then challenge them to remember it through the week. With reception, we went through and did one each day. But for example, you could sit down on a Sunday and go, our word's chuckle, let's fill it all out. And then on Tuesday, you go, okay, give me a word. What does chuckle mean? Can you act it out? Can you draw it? Can you give me a rhyming word? How many syllables are in chuckle? And you can do that throughout the week to make sure your child is retaining that vocabulary and learning new ones. So I've got the basic one there. Then we've got what's it not. So this is working out the antonym, which Cassie, we talked about earlier this week. So essentially you can do this on the go, you can do it with a book. Any word you come across, you can go, oh, what's the opposite of that? So the word is hot, cold. What would happen if our child was cold instead? No problem, Laura, that is in the spelling rules. Let me just add that out. Spelling rules. That's the spelling rules section. The first one was, I've forgotten it already. Holiday games, I'm going to call it. We'll go with that. Thank you for your patience. Then we've got, so you choose another word. So for example, if they are angry, instead of saying, oh, they could be furious, but add to that, what's the opposite of angry? Calm, happy, quiet. How would the story change if that was put in? So we're adapting the vocabulary to see what happens to the story. And you can do it on the go as well. You can just pick out a random word and see if there's an opposite while you're on the way. And then this is a great one for if you're seeing family over the holidays. One of my little boys I work with today actually did exactly this, and went up to his grandma and said, right, can you tell me some words that you really like? And we had I can't even remember what any of them were now. We had turbulence and we had opulence was another one. So turbulence meaning like rough and rocky, and opulence meaning like really, really fancy. And there was another one, and I can't remember what it was. We got a couple of words, and then we talked about what they meant so that he's able to add that to his vocabulary as well. Now he's in year 4, so he has a higher level of vocab anyway, but actually he's been doing something similar to this for years. And his vocabulary is at a year 6 or 7 level. It's really quite impressive how broad it is. And it's simply from doing things like this. Ask other members of the family, what's your favorite word? What's a fancy word that you know that you can share? Because I don't know about you, but for me, I try and use as many different types of vocabulary or vocabulary words as I can, but it's really tough because you end up just using the same words over and over and over again. And that's true of most of us. So therefore, if I ask my dad, he'll have different common word, like repetitive words that he uses, repeated words that he uses, than I will. So adding in that with friends, family members, your child's peers, all of that will build up their vocabulary without you having to spend ages being like, I need to think of another word to teach my child. So just another action. Then I've got the fluency ones with question marks. All you have to do is so it's a reading activity fundamentally. Challenge your child to read it and add a question mark. They don't have to do all of this at once. You could do one a day, you could do a couple here, a couple there, whatever. But the challenge is for your child to read it and see, is it a question, is it not? Now I'm going to skim through that one because this is the one that I really want to talk about. This is the really important one because we've talked about reading with expression before, and I will link this to the reading with expression bonus session when I get that out and recorded. But ultimately, an exclamation mark is dependent upon how you read the sentence. So it could be, I have a cat. That could be the first way you read it. Then you can challenge your child and get them to read it again in a different way. Can you read it as though you're really excited? I have a cat. Would that have an exclamation mark on the end? Yes. Which one sounds better? I have a cat. Or I have a cat. It's telling us something about the person saying it rather than the sentence itself. So you could say, I have a cat, full stop. Fantastic. Your child could say, yeah, it sounds better. I have a cat. Exclamation mark. Okay, brilliant. Why? Because it sounds like I'm really excited about having a cat. Maybe I've never had a cat before. Maybe this is something that I'm really happy about. Brilliant. I have to admit, the first time I got my cat, that's exactly what I said. I went and called my friend. I was like, I have a cat. And that was definitely an exclamation moment. So it's very much, I have a cat. That, let's not lie, Lauren. We all know someone who's had that sentence. My own godmother was just turned up one day, opened the door, and she had a cat. But anyway, so you can adapt it. And the point of this practice isn't that there's a yes or no. So don't worry if you're like, Jen, I don't know which is the answer. There isn't a yes or no. They could all be exclamation marks or they could all be full stops. But the challenge is to make sure your child reads them as a full stop and as an exclamation mark. So stop it, for example, can be a full stop. I've definitely put a firm full stop on the end of it in a classroom if I'm going, stop it. It's not a shout. I'm not exclaiming, stop it. It's just a full stop, which can be a lot more powerful for certain children. Stop. It works. It's not an exclamation. But stop it is also one. That's probably the more common one. So maybe that's the exclamation mark. But again, it's the same with all of this. And I've added in this one. Oh no. Again, an exclamation. It's a slightly different way of reading it. Or, oh no. Again, he hurt his leg. He hurt his leg. So yeah, it's about building up that intonation, seeing which one works. And if your child reads, I cleaned the bathroom, and puts an exclamation point, then you say, that doesn't sound like an exclamation. Can you try again? And either they put a full stop or they read it, I cleaned the bathroom, which again was an exclamation that my mother wished she'd hear when I was living with her. Then we've got what punctuation. So this is taking both of the other ones and then putting them together. This is the only one where there is a yes or no answer, and that's the question marks. So I would advise you don't introduce your child to the concept of putting both at this point. They will end up doing it later on, but don't introduce it now because it does just, they end up putting a question mark and exclamation mark everywhere. So instead of it being like, what time is it? Which is an exclamation and a question, I would get them to choose one or the other. But again, it's exactly the same. They have to read it. They can read it several different ways, but they have to decide whether it's a full stop or an exclamation mark. If it's a question, it has a question mark. Otherwise, it could be either. So I've just seen Lauren's commented and I missed it. We do more wider vocabulary things now and discuss individual words. Velvety was yesterday's word of the day. She liked how it sounded and kept repeating it. I love the word velvety. I feel like velvety sounds velvety. It's a great word. I don't know if anyone else feels like that, but yeah, I absolutely love that. And then again, we've got the tricky word activities. So I've gone through and I've created all of the tricky words that we've done so far. So this is year 1 and year 2. And exactly like reception, either they can pick it up and read it and use it, or you pick up a word. So you pick up break and they take the blank one. They have to write down break and then they can use it. So you can use it as a real or a fake word. I'm exactly the same, Lauren. The word velvety makes it all fuzzy. Yeah, it feels like velvet. Love it. Again, we've got what's the passcode. So this is a great one, again, for any new words. Stick them up on the wall. You know, my favorite tricky word one is just to stick them up around the house and get my child to touch them every time they pass and say the word. That's brilliant. This is a sort of more condensed one to make sure that your child is doing it every day. So put it on the front door. In order to leave the house, you have to touch sugar, hole, improve in that order. Off you go. Cool. It's a great one for getting them just recognizing it on sight rather than having to sort of pause and work it out. I've got hangman again. So for this one, I would again still start with these options, but because they're year 1, once they've played it a few times, you can stop with the options and they just have to work it out. If your child finds this particularly tricky, teach them the strategy of start with the vowel. Always start with the vowel because it will just make your life easier. And I would still stick it to things like we are only working on tricky words or we're only working on red words. So as they get older, when you hit year 2, you can start playing hangman with any word in the world, but I would start with a smaller category so your child has an option to work from. Lauren says, tricky words aren't even tricky anymore. I'm not sure what level her reading's at. That's brilliant. That's what we want at this point. Is her spelling the same? Because that would be the next point. And then again, we've got the swimming for words. So what I will do, that was the other thing, I've got foam things. So I'll add foam things into the Facebook post and I'll post it in the email as well so that we can cover all of that. Spelling's also brilliant. That's wonderful, Lauren. That's really, really good to hear. So that is all from me today. I'm going to stop recording now just in case anyone has any messages or any questions. As I said, for those who've joined me a little bit late, I actually did AOB at the start of the session. So you might want to rewatch just the first like 10 minutes. I'm going to start doing it that way around so that anyone who's watching it on replay or catch up gets the information before they get pulled away to go and do something else. So yeah, but I will stop recording and I'll tell you the quick update.